Ruthie?
No,
We got
And
it.
then,
he's
yeah.
good. He's got what he needs. So
I
I'm.
am putting mine on
You
pause.
back home, or are you still?
Just back, yeah. Back from Normandy.
So we have Mike is in Paris, and we have, I'm in New York, and Jen is in North Carolina. This is a test, and who else do we have? A lot of Californians. Joe's in Minnesota. Kurt is in Denver.
Denver.
Todd is in Colorado, or Todd
That is in Minnesota.
sorry, and Dave and Brian are in Michigan. So I think that's the geography.
Margarita's coming out, she can't get over
So
this.
I thought maybe we might start with a little introduction to the family. Oh, there's Wesley's joining us.
Hey, Wesley.
So one more.
Oh, he's not on yet. Let's get there.
Oh, I thought, maybe briefly to get all the nephews and nieces and cousins straightened out. Maybe Joe and David, you could briefly introduce your kids, and then Mick got a gaggle here, so figure out some way to do that. But I just think Victor knows most of our nephews, but none of your kids or grandkids. So Joe, you want to start quickly just to make
Sure.
sure?
So I'm waving. I'm Joe in Minnesota, and my kids are Kurt in Denver, who's going to be in a different place on everybody's screen, waving his hand, and Todd in Minnesota. And the only one that's not here is Paul. And all of them are married and gainfully employed, which is really good because their father is not.
Okay, and David?
Yeah, Ryan's here, Steve is on, Steve wave. Okay, and Mikey is over there in Paris, so everybody's good.
Okay.
We've got 3 grandchildren in Paris, and Mike's 3 girls, and Steve's got a girl, and Brian's got a boy. So and they're two of the 3 of them are driving, so it's good.
And my wife,
Scary.
Margarita's trying to get on right now too, in LA.
Oh, good.
Well,
Okay.
let's see, I guess our tribe is next. And the only ones I don't see are Debbie and her family. They were planning to be here. Wesley,
Here.
yeah, Wes, of course, is their oldest son. And Wes, you want to wave or something so they have some idea who we're talking about here?
Oh,
He's very pale right now.
Yeah, he's traveling, so I don't know how good a connection he has.
Oh, there's
Yeah, hi, I can hear everyone just fine. I'm on about to board an airplane, so I can't really share my video at the moment.
Okay.
And Debbie and her family, let's see.
Wave.
They're there.
Oh, I don't see them. I
They
guess
were there.
they've disappeared on my screen. Well, all right. And
They're there.
good. Debbie, your group want to wave so they'll have some idea who we're talking about. Roger, Debbie's husband, and Dylan and Grace and Lily. Can you guys wave so that we have some, Victor will know who we're talking about here?
Yeah, they did.
I can't see anybody who's waving, but I don't know
You
why.
may have to swipe to the left because you may have to pick up some additional, because we don't all fit on one screen.
Okay.
In the upper right, does it say view?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see it. Yeah.
So if you select gallery, you'll see
Yeah. I
everybody.
see it because, I see. Oh my God. There's a lot of, oh my God. Oh my God. There's a lot of people.
Don't you remember the Cousins Club meetings? There were a lot of people there too.
Yeah, I know, but.
And then Lisa and her family, I've got to find you on my screen here, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Hello.
There we go. Lisa, and there's and Hunter I saw Hunter earlier. Is he on a different screen?
Yeah.
No, he
I'm here.
may be.
Sorry, had to get the dog.
And let's see who. I guess that's it. And then Bob's children are next, which would be Jennifer and her 2 daughters.
No.
A daughter and Peter and.
Dad, you forgot your son, Steve.
Well, that's all right. He's kind of quiet. I think you're muted. Honestly, I don't hear you.
Oh, he's not muted.
Oh, he's not?
No.
So
There's a
anyway,
little, there's a little red icon in the left hand, bottom left hand, that tells you if the mic is on.
and Steve, sorry about that. And, so Jennifer, we got to Jennifer and her daughter and son, and John. Well, I've got to find John first before I can tell you.
Wave.
We're somewhere here.
He's here.
And John and Mimi, and we were lucky enough to attend their virtual wedding this last year, which was quite an honor.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. And where are you, John, now? Are you guys in San Francisco or where?
It's a great question. We're actually in San Francisco today, but we'll be somewhere else by the end of the day.
What's your next stop?
Our next stop, I was going to let you guys know, our next stop is actually Manhattan Beach, but I'll let you know in a separate email or phone call or such.
Good. We'll look forward to a telephone call. How would that be? Good, good. Well, anyway, that's our group, and we all wanted you to meet Victor. Victor is a first cousin who I guess we'll turn it all over to. Okay, Vic?
Boy, that's a lot of people there.
That's right, they're all friendly.
Okay, well, I hope so. I don't know, at least most of the grandkids. And since you don't know, yeah, maybe I should start at the end. That I was not lucky enough to be born a Schneider or a Schlenz in the case of a mixed family, but I wasn't indeed lucky to be adopted by the family. And that happened in 1947 when I was 13, almost 14 years old, which is kind of amazing for a family to adopt a teenager. And at the time, they also adopted my little brother, who was 9, and a girl who was not a biological sister. She was 11. And we were adopted by Frank and Radish and Gordy Schneider. And Frank is, or was, Norman Schneider's brother and Becky Schlenz's brother. So, yeah, that's the end of the story. And it's a great end, and it's a lucky end because I've been pretty lucky my whole life, to be honest. So, let me go back to the beginning of the story and how we got to that. I made some notes, so if you see me looking down, I don't want to, just rant and ramble. So, and I want to keep it as short as possible. I'm going to tell you about 90% of the story, and the other 10%, I just don't want to discuss. So, yeah, anyway, I don't remember much about when the war started, because I was only 6 or 7 years old. About the first thing, when the war was going on, I went to school and everything was pretty normal. The first thing I really remember is everyone getting issued gas masks. And there were big, small ones for the kids and big ones, I guess, for the adults. And very often, sirens would blow at night. We'd take our gas masks, and we'd run down into the metro or the subway, because if Paris was going to be bombed, we'd be safe down there because the bombs would not penetrate. And after a while, you'd hear the sirens, and it meant it was safe, and you'd go back. And we still kept going to school. I remember food was kind of scarce. It was rationed. My family in France was rather poor, as I'm pretty sure, because we lived in a very small apartment. The apartment was so small, it didn't have a bathroom. We had to use a communal bathroom in the apartment building. And this, we lived on the second floor, and on the first floor and on that street were a lot of shops. I'm probably going to tell you more than you want to know about the shops, but it's important to the story. I remember there was a butcher shop. There was a fruit and vegetables. There was a pharmacy. There was a bakery across the street. Now, in France, and at least in those days, there were 2 types of bakery. One of them was a fancy bakery for cakes, and the other was just a boulangerie, which in those days sold only baguettes. anyway, life went on, and I remember one day there was a knock on the door, and my dad opened the door, and there stood two German soldiers, and they took my dad away. And I remember my mother crying, closing the door, and that's when things pretty much changed. We stopped going to school. At least I stopped going to school, and we just stayed in. Yeah, we just stayed in the apartment. The only time that we went out of the apartment was to go and get food, and we'd go out. I don't know how often, but we had no refrigeration in the apartment or anything else, so my mother would go shopping pretty quick. I mean, pretty often. And we just stayed there, and that was it, and we just, yeah, yeah, we just lived there. And this went on for a long time. Now, when I say a long time, a short period of time, I don't know really, I don't really know what that means. I don't know if it was months or weeks or days. At that time, I was only 8 or 9 years old. So time really didn't have a lot of meaning. And I don't think we had a calendar. I remember we had a clock in the house. Yeah, just one alarm clock, that was it. But anyway, we stayed there. And then one day again, there was a knock on the door, and my mother opened it, and there stood a French gendarme, and he took my mother away. Now, at the time, my little brother was sick. He had some kind of a rash all over his body and all over his face. And I'm not sure what it was, but Mick and David would be much more familiar with it. I always assumed it was either chicken pox or measles, one or the other. I don't know which. I never got it, so I kind of assumed that I'd had it before. But I think what saved us, my little brother and I, was the fact that he had this all over his face, because I think the gendarme took a look at it and said, "Oh boy, I'm not going near that kid." So he just left us there. I know that usually when they took the mother, they also took the kids, because I know in at least one instance that this did happen. Anyway, they left us there. I don't remember, but I know I was about 9 years old in a couple of months. And at the end of the story, I'll tell you why, and you'll agree. It's kind of amazing that, that a 9 and a 5-year-old could live by themselves. But anyway, they left, we closed the door, and we just stayed there. And after a while, we got hungry, and the only food that was in the house was yogurt. I remember that specifically. So we had the yogurt. And then we went to sleep that night. And the next morning, we were hungry, and there was no food in the house. Yeah, and Jerry was sick, and my mother was putting some kind of lotion or ointment on his on the rash, and since he was itching, I did the same thing. And there was no food, but we were hungry, so I figured I had to go out and get some food. I didn't have any money, so I went to the to the store that sold vegetables and fruit, and asked him if he could give us anything to eat, and he said no. So I decided to go to the bakery, the boulangerie. The problem is that was across the street, and I was not allowed to cross the street. But I had no choice, so I figured out how to cross, and I went in there, and I asked him if he could give us some bread to eat. And he said no, he didn't have any, but come back later, he might have some. So I had to cross the street and go back. So I went back to the apartment. I waited a while. I went back across the street. I asked him for bread. He said, no, come back later. I did that 3, 4, 5 times during the day. By then it was late in the day. It was starting to get dark. And again, I went back, and he did give us some bread. He had some pieces of bread that he put in one of those long paper bags, like you put in a baguette. And that's what we saw. Yeah, so I took it back to the apartment, and Jerry and I, that's what we had for dinner. if I stutter a little bit, I do have a tendency to stutter, so I apologize. Next morning, got up, we were hungry. I went back to the store with the vegetables and all that. Asked him, he said no. I went across the street to the boulangerie, and he said, come back later. I went back a number of times. He said, yeah, he said, come back later. Meanwhile, I was putting that stuff on Jerry, and I ran out of the lotion. So he was really itching badly. And I don't know if that was on his third or fourth day, but on one of those days, and he was scratching. And I remember he scratched right on the left. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, on the right side of his nose. Yeah, by the eye, and it was scratching so bad it started bleeding. So I put my finger on it and I tried to stop it. I took my finger off, it was still bleeding. I put my finger on. Anyway, it kept on. Yeah, it kept on bleeding, and I didn't have any more lotion, so I decided I needed to go down to the pharmacy and get some stuff. So I took the bottle, which was empty. I went to the pharmacy. I asked the pharmacist if he could give me some stuff, which he was nice enough to give me. And anyway, I came back. Yeah, by then it had stopped bleeding, but I still put some stuff. Anyway, I did go back a number of times to the bakery. It got late in the day, and again, he put some bread in some paper bags, and that's what we had for dinner. Well, actually, for the whole day, that's all we had because we had nothing left over. Next day, again, the same thing. I did that for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days. And each time I go back 3 or 4 times, each time he tell me come back at night. And after a while, I figured out, you know what? He's not going to give me anything during the day. So there's no sense in me going against, crossing the street. I'll just go back late in the day, which I did. And very often, he would give me bread. Sometimes he would give us a lot, and we'd have enough for that night and for the next morning, which was really good because then we would not go hungry for the whole day. Sometimes I'd go there and he'd be closed already. So there was nothing to eat that night, but the problem is there was also nothing to eat the whole next day. So we'd go a couple of days without eating. And I really don't know how long, because again, I had no conception of time, but I think that Jerry and I lived like that for at least a month, maybe a month and a half. And the reason I say that is because I remember many, many, many times going and getting bread. I also remember many times getting quite a bit of bread, so we could eat for 2 days. And I also remember many times not getting anything, so we wouldn't eat for a couple of days. You know, if you add all those, it seems like it would be at least a month, maybe longer. But even if it was shorter, it's pretty amazing to think that a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old could live by themselves for that long a period of time. Anyway, one day, and it was dark because we'd eaten already, there was a knock on the door, and I wasn't going to answer it because the first time they knocked, they took my dad away. Then the second time they knocked, they took my mom away, and I never saw her again. So, and they kept on knocking and knocking and saying, we want to help you. Please open the door. Come on. We want to help you. And there are some things that I remember very, very well, and some that I've forgotten or I'm kind of guessing at. But this I remember specifically. And whoever was at the door was not going away. But it was a lady. It was not a man. Remember, it was 2 German soldiers who took my dad away. And it was a French gendarme who took my mother away. And finally, whoever it was on the other end of the door said, look, I'm a lady. I'm not going to hurt 2 little boys. You know that. To me, that it seems kind of silly right now, but to me, it made sense. So I opened up the door and she said, okay, come with me. Yeah, I'm going to take care of you. She closed the door. She took us away. She took us to a hospital. Now, I think Jerry and I were probably pretty dirty at that point in time because we hadn't changed clothes. We hadn't washed or anything. Excuse me. Anyway, they took us to the hospital and the nurses took us in. And I remember gave us some hospital gowns. I'm sure they washed us. And I don't remember much about the hospital, but I think we were only there 2, 3, 4 days at the most. And the next thing that I remember, and it's not, is being in a little village someplace in France. I don't know how we got there. I don't remember how we got there, but I remember only part of the name of the village. It was something sur l'église. So it was something L'Étoile sur l'église or Le Soleil sur l'église or something like that. That's all that I remember is sur l'église. And we were with a family there. The house was small. Again, it didn't have a bathroom. It had an outhouse. The village did not have any paved streets. It was all dirt roads. It was a farming village, and everything was along that main dirt road. I remember some of the things. The school was along there. There was a cemetery. There was a church. There was a shoemaker. There was a carpenter and a blacksmith. And the man and woman that we lived with, he was the blacksmith, and his shop was right next to the house. And I remember he was a really muscular guy. He'd get up every morning, he'd go into the blacksmith shop, and the forge would go on. There were no Germans around there at all, but I wound up having a lot of chores to do. I remember one of the things I had to do not every morning, but a few times a week was going to get milk. And I was always have to get up before it was dark. I mean, before it was light, it was still dark. I'd have to take a metal can and go to a farm, get the metal can filled up with milk and come back. Well, to go to the farm, I had to go by the cemetery. And I was, yeah, I remember I was scared of ghosts. So I come up, and it was a small village, so it was a small cemetery, but I come up to the cemetery, I look both ways to make sure there were no ghosts. Then I'd run as fast as I could to go past it. And then I'd go and get the milk. But coming back, I'd have to go through the cemetery again. Unfortunately, with a milk can, it was kind of heavy. So I'd have to run as fast as I could, but I wasn't running very fast. But I never got caught by ghosts anyway. But I come back, and I remember it rained a lot in that village. And when it was warm and when it rained, there would be a lot of mushrooms that would pop up in the fields. And after getting the milk, I'd have to get a basket and go out in the fields and go and pick mushrooms, because that's what we'd have for dinner that day. And if I didn't bring back enough mushrooms, the lady that was staying would get really mad. I remember, and she'd yell at me and she'd slap me and hit me a couple of times, or a few times, and send me out to go and get more mushrooms. The thing is that there were only so many mushrooms in the fields, and I could only get so many of them. So I'd have to go out, but I have to go further and further and further afield to go and get the mushrooms. The problem is that if I did that, then I'd come back, I'd have to go to school, but then I'd be late for school, and then the teacher would be upset. So it was a no-win situation. As I mentioned, it rained a lot, so very often I had to go and do that. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing earlier. In front of the house where we live was a really big tree also. And when we got there, on the tree were little, what looked like fruit. It was maybe the size of big grapes. It was not bunches of grapes. It was just fruit that size. It was green. It had some kind of fuzz on it. And anyway, yeah, that's important. That's important a little bit later on. But anyway, the fruit was not there and it kept on growing. But anyway, it kept on raining. And when it did not rain, there were no mushrooms. And then I'd have to go out in the fields and get dandelions, because that's what we have for dinner that night. And the dandelions had to be a certain size. If they're too big, yeah, they weren't good. So you have to get them, I remember small or medium or whatever. And again, the same thing. If I didn't bring back enough, I get slapped and hit and hit and that. And dandelions, yeah, there were a lot of them. So I usually didn't have a tough time, yeah, finding enough. There was also a garden that I had to take care of. And I don't recall ever getting hit because of doing something wrong in the garden. But then fall came, and then there were no more yeah, dandelions or mushrooms. But remember that tree, well, the fruit started falling off the tree, and it wasn't fruit, it was walnuts.
I got him. Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know. Something just happened on my phone. I don't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. So now I had to go and pick all the walnuts that had fallen the previous day. So I take a basket and go and get all the walnuts. And the first few times I picked it up, again, the lady of the house would come out and look, and if she found any individual walnuts out there, she'd yell, get upset. Again, I get hit. So I recruited my little brother to come in back of me and help me find all the walnuts so I wouldn't get hit. Then Christmas came, and everyone in school was really excited by Christmas. That was really exciting because everyone would come and go to church. And then everyone was bringing all kinds of food, all the specialties, and there would be all kinds of food to eat, and everyone would be happy. And Christmas, and I don't know if it was Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or a couple days before Christmas. Anyway, the lady of the house, cooked whatever she was cooking. And then she told us that Jerry and I could not go to church because we didn't have nice shoes and nice clothes. And she was right, we didn't have any nice shoes. Actually, the only shoes that we had were wooden shoes. I mentioned there was a shoemaker, on the main street. And when people needed shoes in the village, they go to him, and he'd measure their feet, and then he'd carve out a pair of shoes for them out of wood. Well, sometimes he missed; they were too big or too small or what. So he needed to do a second set. So he always had extra shoes in there. So when Jerry and I grew ours, we'd go in there, and he'd find us a pair of shoes that somewhat fit, and that's what we'd wear. But they were always too big. Yes, when you walk, you made a lot of noise walking a pair of wooden shoes. But at least we had shoes. Anyway, this went on, and spring came, and I remember, I was in school, and the school was very small. It was only 1 or 2 rooms, so they only had 1 or 2 teachers. And all of a sudden, we heard a motorcade outside. So we stepped out. It was a big, big convoy of German trucks. And there were German trucks going through, and with soldiers in the back of the trucks. And it seemed to go on for a long time. I don't know how long, but it went on for a long time. And after the trucks came, a motorcycle, which were really a motorcycle with sidecars with Germans in there. And they went through the town. We went back in the schoolroom. We're in there a little bit when the lady was taking care of us came, got me and Jerry out, and we went. Usually, to go back home, we just walk along the street, but she took us a back way along the farms, along the fields, to the house, and she told us we could not go outside anymore. We'd have to stay in the house. And I would not go and get them milk or anything else. We just have to stay there, period. And after a few days, someone came and got us. And we left. And the next thing that I remember, we were in a city called Lyon, Lyon. which was in the southern, southwestern part of France. And we were put in an apartment there, just Jerry and I. And I'm not really sure exactly what went on, but we were in there, I think, for just a few days. Someone would come in once or twice, or maybe 3 times a day, I forget, and just bring us some food. And one day they came in and they told us we'd be going to Switzerland. And we'd be going by train. And they gave me some kind of a list. I'm not really sure what it was. I can only guess what it was. And I think it was a list of train stations that we'd go, that we'd be going through. Anyway, they went and they took us that day or the next day. The time frame is a little bit hazy. And they put us on the train and they told us that when we got to the other end, that someone would meet us. And I think the list was a list of train stations so I could keep track of where we were and not get off too early or too late or whatever. Anyway, at that point in time, I was about 10 years old, so Jerry was about 6. You know, and then thinking, it seems a little bit far-fetched at 6, and a 10-year-old or 5 or 9-year-old could go through that. But even though some of the things I have to guess at, I know those times were correct. Again, or those ages were correct. So anyway, we got on the train, we got to the other end, and someone did meet us and took us to an apartment where we stayed. I don't know for how long. And then the next thing that I remember is walking in some fields, and there were some trees, and they were carrying Jerry on their shoulder. And we got to a place which was somewhat hidden amongst trees, and there were a whole bunch of other kids there. I don't know, maybe 12, 15, maybe more, I forget. But Jerry and I remember, were the oldest ones. I'm sorry, the youngest ones. And I remember it was a great day. It was a beautiful day. I remember just lying there and looking up at the sky and seeing cumulus clouds up there and finding out shapes in there and so forth. And we fell asleep. Anyway, there was no food because I think, and I don't think I'm imagining that, but I think they told us that we would not be able to eat because they didn't want any papers or anything there for anyone to know that this was a place where people were. And there was someone, I think a teenager who was in charge of the group. Anyway, we were there all day. And then a little bit later on, and it must have been close to the evening, we heard some dogs bark. And whoever the teenager was in charge said, you know what, I think the Germans are looking for us. We have to make a run for the border. So it was everyone for themselves. Everyone ran for the border. Now, Jerry and I, being the youngest, were always, we couldn't keep up. And pretty soon everyone was way ahead of us. And pretty soon we couldn't see them. And pretty soon Jerry and I Jerry mostly, but me too. Well, both of us really. I got really tired. So we just sat down and rested a little bit. And then we started walking again. Then we kept on walking. And then we'd sit and rest. And then it got dark. And we'd walk and we'd rest. And we kept on walking. And it seemed like we were walking forever. By then it was dark. It was really a clear night. I remember that. It was really a clear night. There were a lot of stars in the sky. And as we were walking, I was looking around and I think it was to my left, there was an area that was brighter than the rest. I couldn't see any lights or anything, but it was kind of bright. So we started walking towards that. And again, it was pretty far away. It was not something that was 2-3 blocks away. It was maybe a mile, I don't know how far. Again, we were small, so anything looked pretty far. But we started walking towards that. And we walked and we rested, and we walked and we rested. And at one point in time, I think we were so tired, we kind of fell asleep. But we kept on walking after a while, we got closer so we could see it was a lit area. And what it was there were lamps on top of light poles, and they were shining towards us. And it took us a while to get there. And when we got close to it, so we could make them out, there was a barbed wire fence. and we crawled under the fence and we kept on walking because we could see ahead of us maybe a block and a half. It was really light. I mean, it was almost like daylight. It was so bright. Maybe a block and a half, we could see another fence. We're walking towards that. And as we got close to it, maybe a few feet away, all of a sudden someone started yelling at us. Now, at the time, it seemed like yelling. I think he was talking to us in a very authoritative voice, but he was talking a foreign language. And I thought it was German. And the reason I thought it was German is because in those days I spoke fluent Yiddish. And Yiddish and German are very, very similar with words similar. And I thought I understood some of the words, but I didn't know what he was saying. And it was so unexpected. I mean, I remember Jerry grabbing me and we just froze there. We didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, I don't know where he came from, maybe 15 feet in front of us, on the other side of the barbed wire, there stood a soldier. And to me, he looked like a German soldier. It looked like he was wearing a German uniform, a German helmet. He had a rifle that he was pointing at us. And he was speaking really, really loud, giving us, I didn't know what he was saying. But Jerry and I were pretty much frozen. And where it came from, I don't know. There might have been a sentry box that was hidden, that was camouflaged. Maybe it was behind a tree. I don't know. But he just appeared there all of a sudden. And he moved a little bit closer to the barbed wire fence. And all of a sudden, instead of yelling or talking loud, he started talking really, really softly. I think what he saw is a couple of scared kids. And he might have been a dad himself. I don't know. But he saw a couple of scared kids and he said, oh, wait a second. Anyway, he came up to the fence and he lifted. Now the first barbed wire fence was really in bad shape. This one was really, really in good shape. But he went and he lifted the bottom and he was saying something. And to me, and he was talking softly. It seemed like he was saying, come on, or whatever. I had no choice, I'm kind of guessing. I had no choice, what else could I do? So I went under. I still thought he was a German. And we started walking after that. And as we walked, we were challenged by some other, quote, German soldiers, because I guess they were guarding the border. We kept on walking. After a while, we came to an encampment. To an encampment, and there were buildings there. And we went in the building, sat us in a chair. He went someplace, and he came back with another soldier who spoke French, and took us into an office, and told us we were in Switzerland. So we hadn't made it. The Swiss speak mostly German, but most of them speak two languages. Switzerland is surrounded by France on one side, Italy, and Germany and Austria. So the Swiss who live close to France speak French and German. The Germans speak German and something else, and the Germans near Italy speak German and and Italian. Anyway, he told us we were in Switzerland. He said there was nothing that they could do for us that night, but that the next day, someone would be able to help us. I remember asking him, or telling him that we were hungry, was there any food that he could give us? And he said, no, that everything was closed. There was nothing they could do that night, but there would be food the next morning. He said he'd take us someplace where we could sleep. And he took us to what seemed like a really large building. I don't know how large it really was, but it seemed really, really large. And there were a lot of people sleeping in there. And there were no cots or beds. It was all hay, and people were sleeping on hay. Now, in thinking, I think it took us probably 3-4 hours to get there. Again, I'm only guessing, but I know we started walking when it was still light, and then it got dark. And as you figure, it gets dark around 8. If we start walking around 7, it got dark around 8. We kept on walking. We got to this building. I know there was a light out in this building. I'm not sure when it was, but I assume it was 9, and everyone was asleep. It was probably 10 o'clock. So if we start walking at 7, it was 10. We'd probably walk for 3 hours or so. But anyway, we went to sleep. And next morning we heard, and I'm not sure if it was a siren or a horn or music or something that woke everybody up. And everybody took their blankets and folded them. So I did the same thing. And everyone started walking someplace. So I started walking there, and that was some kind of a dining room. And that's where we had the first food in maybe 24 hours or so. And then everyone, started walking someplace else. So I kind of followed them. I didn't know what else to do. And there was a long line, so I got in line. And the line moved, and we got to the front of the line. And they asked for our names, which I gave them. And everyone gave their names, but everyone left. But I gave them my name and Jerry's name, and they took us aside and said, "Sit here." And I remember getting scared again because I didn't know why we'd be sitting there when everyone else was letting go. Anyway, after a while, everyone was finished. They took us in an office. They asked us for our names, where we came from, birth dates and all that, and told us a lot of things. I pretty much forget what they told us, except for a few things. They said we were in a military camp, that we were restricted to a certain area, and they told us what the area was. And the area was fenced in. They said, and I remember, there would be 4 noises. Now, again, I think, I don't know if it was a siren or horn or whatever. There were 4 noises during the day. The first one, like in the morning, like we heard, that was a call for breakfast. If we didn't go, there would be no breakfast. There would be one, later on in the day, which would be for lunch. There would be one later on in the day, which would be for dinner. And there would be one later on in the day, which meant we had to go inside. We could not be outside at that point in time, period. If we were outside, we could be shot. We would not be shot, I don't think, but that's what he said. Anyway, that was pretty much it. He said the rest of the time we could, well, I don't know what else he told us, but basically we could do whatever we could. And the Swiss were really, really nice to us. We stayed in that camp for maybe 2 or 3, let's see, May, June, July, for maybe 4 months. And again, Jerry and I were the youngest ones there. It was all males, but there were a lot of men in there. There were teenagers, there were boys and all that. But Jerry and I were the youngest ones. And I remember maybe once or twice a month, some ladies would come into camp, and they'd take all the youngest ones, including Jeremy, out. Okay, now this was up in the Alps, and they'd take us up into the mountains. And we go, I think it was a river or a lake, and we could go in there. We didn't have any bathing suits or anything, so we could go, with our feet. And they'd have a picnic lunch, which would be different. But anyway, this went on for quite a while. And then one day, every morning was the same. You'd go have breakfast, you'd go and sign in. And one day when we were signing in, they said that they had found a home for Jerry and me, and that we'd be going to Bern. They gave us some new clothes, or some clean clothes, I should say. They told us to change and come back. And we went by train to Bern. And when we got there, I thought we were going to one family. Well, it turns out they'd found 2 families for us. And I remember being really, really upset. And saying, we couldn't be separated. Well, it didn't help. Anyway, they took, the people were nice enough, and they said, I could come in and see Jerry whenever I wanted, and that I'd see that he was happy and so forth. And they made arrangements for me to go and see him the next day. So he went with his family. I went with mine. The next day we went to see him, and God, it was night and day. I mean, he was all clean. His hair was combed. He was wearing nice clothes. And he was happy. And the reason is because the family that he was with had a little boy exactly his age and exactly his size. So that they had, cleaned him up and changed, into into the little boy's clothes. He took me to his room. It was a beautiful room. And one thing yeah, the house was beautiful. The man of the house was a military officer, and he was in his uniform. And I remember he was wearing a watch, and the lady was wearing a watch, and the house was beautiful. I said, oh boy, people who wear watches must be rich. And from then on, whenever I saw anybody with a watch, I knew they were rich. But anyway, yeah, you know, he seemed happy, so I was happy anyway. They took me and they got me new clothes, and they enrolled me in school right then and there. So I then and there. And that's the reason I say that I think we went at camp for 3 or 4 months, because it was spring when we got there. And when we got to Bern, it was a school year. Now, I'm not sure when school starts in Bern, but it's probably in August. And spring starts in April. So if you figure April, May, June, July, August is 5 months. Well, actually, I found out, actually, amazingly enough, when Mick asked me if I tell my story, I decided, you know, I'm going to look for a few things on the net. And I looked to see if I could find myself on the net under my old name, which I could not. So I looked for Jerome. And sure enough, I found his name on the net, and I found the date that he went into Switzerland, 14 May 1944. And then right next to his name was my name, Victor, except they spelled it Victor. And when I was looking for Victor. Yeah, but they enrolled me in school. I didn't speak any German, but I spoke Yiddish, so I picked up German pretty quickly. And the family that I was with was really nice. They took good care of me, and Jerry's family took good care of him. I learned German. He never learned German because the family that he was with, they were well educated. They spoke French. When he went to school, he went to a French school with a young man he lived with, whose name was Peter. I still remember the address that I lived at, which was 44 Depotstrasse. So some things I remember very, very well. Anyway, I remember, Christmas time came, and we went to a restaurant, and it took me to my first movie. Here I was, 10 years old. I'd never been, no, almost 11 actually. I'd never been to a movie. And I remember the movie was Bambi. And I was amazed to see that, absolutely amazed. And then came my birthday on January 26, 1945. And of course, because every Sunday I'd go to visit Jerry. And it came my birthday, and they gave me a present. And I never recall ever having gotten a present before. And that's the one thing that I still have from France. It's a book. Il y a la vie et aventure de Robinson Crusoe. Now, what's important about this book is not the book itself, but it's also my Rosetta Stone, because from this book, I can figure out a lot of dates. Because in this book, well, you probably can't make it out. Yeah, but there's an inscription in there. It's in French. And it says, à notre frère et ami Victor, à l'occasion de son 11e anniversaire, Jerome and Peter, Bern, 1945. Well, I know this was 1945. Okay, from that, I can deduce a lot of other dates. December 1944 is when I had Christmas in Bern. So that's when I was almost 11. December 1943 is when I had Christmas in that town in Sur-l'Église. So I was almost 10. So I was with a family in that little village when I was 10 and, well, almost 10. Now, okay, and I remember the walnut tree and the walnuts falling off the tree. Now, the walnuts usually fall off the tree October, November. I got there when the walnuts were just starting to grow, which had been probably April. So, so April 1943. So it meant in March, April 1943 is when they took my mother away, and we were living by ourselves, which meant I was 9 years old. My God, it's getting awfully late. I'm talking too much. It's almost 11 o'clock. Oops. Oops, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
We are in rapt attention.
I'm not sure. Well, anyway, let me finish the story pretty quick. Yeah, anyway, yeah, because 11 o'clock. Oh my God. Anyway, yeah, after that came the summer of 1945, and they said that the war was over, and that we'd be going back to France, which we did. And we wound up in an orphanage in Le Mans, France, and the orphanage was in an old castle called Chateau Méancourt. And I've got a picture of the chateau, which I'm not sure. Yeah, I got this up. Yeah, I got this off of the internet. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And Victor, there's no time limit here. You can.
Are you sure?
Yes, there's no time limit.
Okay. Anyway, that's a chateau. It is beautiful. That chateau. Okay, I got this off of the internet. Yeah, just yesterday. It's beautiful. It's been reconditioned. It's been purchased by one of the municipalities. Okay. Here's a chateau again, and you probably can't see it as well. But this has this I also got off the internet. It doesn't show it, but this kind of decrepit a little bit there. And you see a bunch of people in front. That's when it was being used as an orphanage. And those are some of the orphans there. And I might very well be in that picture. I don't know. You can't make it out. Okay, here's a picture of some of the kids, which I got off of the, okay, again, I might very well be in there. Actually, there are quite a few pictures of this orphanage here on the net, in the Holocaust Museum. But anyway, to finish my story, we got to Chateau Méancourt, and it was all a bunch of, no, it was mostly kids who had been orphaned. During the war. Some of the kids there still had one parent, but the parent had been so traumatized they couldn't take care of their kids. And I remember being very, very jealous of the kids who still had one parent. But anyway, but the people who took care of us were very good. They, we went to school there, and but it was an orphanage, so there wasn't a lot. There was one bicycle for 30 or 40 or 50 kids, maybe. Every night we had noodles. Every single night that I was there, we had noodles. And I got so sick and tired of eating noodles. Now, when I say noodles, that's it, just noodles. There was no sauce. There was no tomato sauce. There was no butter on it. There was no margarine, just noodles. And the reason we had noodles is because the American soldiers bought noodles. There was an American encampment. Are you sure you're not getting bored?
Nobody's bored, trust me. We are so very interested in you continuing.
Well, okay, well, there was an American encampment not too far from there, and the American soldiers would come, and they come on weekends, and they visit with us. And I suspect many of them were Jewish soldiers. And I remember they all had watches, which meant they were all rich. All Americans were rich. Yeah, but they come on the weekends, and they brought us lifesavers. The candy lifesaver. Do they still sell those? Yeah. Well, they bring us lifesavers. And they bring noodles. They bring big bags of noodles, but they never brought any sauce. So anyway, that's what we had every night. We had noodles. Yeah, but they came. I remember one time they came with a whole bunch of trucks, and they put us in the trucks because they had a surprise. And they took us to a movie theater in Le Mans. And yeah, and the movie we saw was Robin Hood. So that was the second movie we saw. And I remember we came back, and we made swords out of piece of wood, and we're fighting and doing all that stuff. But anyway, we had noodles. I don't know what we had for breakfast or for or for lunch. And this chateau was out in the country, and I remember there were a lot of wild strawberries. So we ate wild strawberries to make a difference. Anyway, in January 1947, I got a letter from someone in Gary, Indiana, saying that they wanted to adopt me and my little brother and a girl named Fanny. And I was going to be a rich American because everyone in America had watches. And I don't know, there was a lot of correspondence, there was a lot of things going on. Finally, 9 months later, which is kind of appropriate, supposedly all the papers had come through. And they asked, okay, my new mom and dad, and I won't refer to them as new, but my mom and dad asked Grandma and Grandpa to come and pick us up because Grandma and Grandpa still had some friends in Europe, and they were very active in the Jewish labor, the Jewish workmen's circle, and they had contacts with them. And I think that's let me back up a little bit. I'm trying to finish quickly, and I'm missing some of the story. The way that mom and dad found us is, okay, Grandma and Grandpa had heard about the orphanage, and it's somehow the Jewish workmen's circle in Hammond, Indiana, had become a little bit of a sponsor and was sending money and doing things for the orphanage. And as a thank you, the orphanage took pictures of all the kids in the orphanage, put it in a binder, and sent it to Grandpa. Well, somehow Grandpa and Grandma shared it with Mom and Dad. And for some reason, Mom and Dad decided to adopt 3 kids. To me, it's absolutely amazing. I don't understand it. I would never do it. Not only would I not adopt a teenager, but to adopt 3 kids sight unseen out of a book, kids who might be traumatized, I don't know. I just don't understand it. I just don't understand it. So anyway, that's how we got to it. So anyway, came September, and they asked Grandma and Grandpa to come and pick us up. So Grandma and Grandpa went to France and spent a few days in Paris before actually coming to meet us, and met up with some friends there and some people that they knew. And then they went to the American Embassy, to get a visa. And the American Embassy said, we don't know anything about it, which was a bit of a shock. So they called Dad, and Dad said, okay, let me see what I can do. Well, in those days, it took a long time to get to the US. It was at least a 5-year process because everyone wanted to come to the US. And of course, Mom and Dad didn't want that. So they tried to accelerate it. Dad knew a congressman by the name of Bill Schulte. So back in January, he contacted Bill, and Bill said, I'm not on any important committees, but I got you in touch with someone who's important. And Bill got Dad in touch with Saul Bloom. Saul Bloom was a congressman from New York, and Saul Bloom was head of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Because of that, he dealt a lot with the State Department, and he took us on as, I guess, a cause. And he got, okay. Now you have an act of Congress. Well, this took an act of Congress. I guess we were added as a rider to some bill to authorize us to come early. And also Saul Bloom gave my dad a phone number. And he told him, don't ever use that phone number unless it's a real emergency, because it's an important phone number and whoever it is can't help you. But if you need anything, just contact me. Well, I guess it was late it was late in the day. He couldn't get a hold of Saul, of Congressman Bloom, so he called the number. And some guy answered and said, how the goddamn hell did you get this far into the White House? And Dad said, yeah, please don't hang up. My dad thinks he spoke to Truman. He's not sure. But whoever spoke to was pretty powerful, because he told him the story. And whoever it was said, okay, have your parents go to the embassy tomorrow. The visas will be there. And Grandpa and Grandma went to the embassy and the visas were there. So they came to Le Mans, picked us up, went to Paris. And got ready to go to the US. And if you think about it, I was 13 and a half, almost 14. Jerry was 9 and May was 11. Oh, let me tell you a little bit about May too. We never discussed it, but she also lost all of her family. She had brothers and sisters. I don't know how many, but she also lost all of her brothers and sisters during the Holocaust. Somehow she wound up in the convent. So in some respects, she had it easier. She said the sisters were not, or the nuns were not very nice, but somehow she had it easier than we did. I think she had, because she was in there. Now her name was Fanny, which is a very Jewish name. At least in France it is. And you couldn't have a Jewish name in a convent, so they gave her a new name, Aimee. Now Aimee, spelled A-I-M-E-R in French, means like, but for a name it's spelled E-M-E with an accent over the first E and then another E. So in France, she was known as Aimee until she got to the orphanage, when she was known as Fanny. So when she came to the US, she was known as Fanny. So anyway, when you think about it, adopting 3 kids, it's pretty unusual. Adopting 3 older kids is pretty unusual. And when you think about it, it's really sad that I was 13 years old, and the only thing that I had to my name was my little brother and that one book. So on September 13th, that's all I had. Not on September 3rd, 1947, that's all I had. On September 14th, I'm sorry, on September 4th, I'm getting all choked up here. On September 4th, I landed in the US. My new dad had a watch. My new mom had a watch. I knew they were rich, and I knew I'd be rich. And just to add just a tiny bit more to the story, that was on a Thursday. On a Friday morning, I got up. I had breakfast. Mom made breakfast, and she made scrambled eggs, and she put some kind of a long strip of something on 2 or 3 strips of something on the plate. I didn't know what that was. And then there was some bread, but the bread was brown. I didn't know what that was. And then there was some milk. Well, the bread was toast. I'd never had toast before. The long strips were bacon. I'd never had bacon before. I remember we went out to lunch that day. And Mick, you might remember, on 5th Avenue in Gary, there was a movie, The Tivoli. Right next to Tivoli was the Tivoli Cafe. I remember that's where we went for lunch. And she had hamburgers, French fries, and a drink. And in the drink was some kind of a long stick. Well, it was a straw. I didn't know what a straw was for. I'd never had a straw before. So I looked and I questioned that. Well, okay, I did not speak English, of course, but I spoke Yiddish, and Dad spoke Yiddish. But I looked at Mom and with a question mark, and she showed me to sip, so I did. but I took too big a sip and it came shooting out my nose. Anyway, I mentioned that just to show you how little I knew about America and about some of the foods. And I worked very, very, very hard at becoming an American, at becoming a rich American. And I'm not rich. I'm comfortable, but I'm not rich. But I'm comfortable, but I am an American. I learned English pretty well. I speak English. I know I still have a little bit of an accent, but not much. But believe it or not, there's still some words I will not and cannot pronounce. If a word has two R's in it, I cannot pronounce it. Like the lion, R-O-A-R-E-D, I can't say that word. There's a city west of Chicago, A-U-R-O-R-A. I'm glad my mom and dad didn't live there because I never would have been able, like the family R-E-A-R-E-D, their kids, I cannot pronounce it. I know it's weird, but I can't pronounce it. But anyway, that's about 90%. Of the story. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. I'll be glad to answer them. But again, I've taken up so much of your time. I'm embarrassed.
Don't be embarrassed. We're so appreciative and grateful that you were willing to share that great story with us. If anybody does have questions, feel free to ask, or I don't think we have a raise your hand option here. So just.
Yeah, it's me, it's Catherine. I'm very happy to hear that I'm French, actually.
Okay, and, I can tell.
So my accent is much worse than yours. And thank you so much. It was super, super moving. I'm very, very happy that being part of your family now. And so I'm married to Mike, and
yes.
we live in Paris. And I have a question because you say that you used to speak Yiddish in Paris. So my question is where were they from, your parents? Which part of Eastern Europe they were from?
Well, I never really knew, and as far as I know, with my mother and dad, I always spoke French and Yiddish both. But the reason I'm 90% sure that they come from Poland originally. And the reason is because my original name is Polish, number one. Number two is the reason I know that at least my mother was not born in France is because once we went to a restaurant and the waiter asked, and what will you have for your boisson? And she looked at me and she said, I don't want any poisson. She didn't know the difference between poisson and boisson. You have a new French, poisson and poisson. One is fish and the other is drink. And the waiter asked her, what did you want for your drink? And she thought he asked her, what do you want for fish? So it tells me, again, I have to guess at some of these things, but because she didn't know the difference, I'm assuming she was not born in France. And I'm assuming that she was born in Poland because my name was Reusner, and Reusner is a Polish name.
And I have a last question. It's did you ever go back to France?
Yes, I went back to France a number of times when I was in the Air Force. I had some things to do in France. And also when I was in business in France, in America, I went back, but I never went back to 17 Rue de Meaux. I also went back to Switzerland when I was in business. And I decided not to go back to 44 Depostrasse, but to go back to where Jerry lived. And I got to within a couple of blocks with her, and I just couldn't go. So yes, I never went back.
Thank you so much.
Vic, when did you become a U.S. citizen?
Actually, that's kind of a story in itself. I was under again, I wanted to become an American. I worked very, very hard at learning English, at learning about games, about football and baseball and basketball, about learning American history, about becoming a good citizen. I've voted in every election since I turned 21. When I was in the Air Force, I did more than my share of things. So anyway, I really want to become an American. And I was under the impression that you had to become an American before you turn 16. If you did not become an American by 16, then you had to wait until you were 21. Well, I turned 16 in 1950. And I remember going to Hammond, Indiana, which is where the federal court was, with two witnesses, mom and dad, of course, and Emma and Jerry and Gordy. And that was in January 1950. And going to the court and going before Judge Schweikert, and then being very disappointed because there was something wrong with the paperwork. And I could not become a citizen. And I was devastated. I was so depressed. No matter what mom said, I couldn't. She got me out of it. She said, it'll be before 21. I was convinced I couldn't be an American before I turned 21. Well, it turned out I was wrong. It turned out I was wrong because in March 1950, I became an American citizen. And and then I really felt like an American, because I wasn't a proper grade in school. I was getting pretty good grades. I learned English. And everything was good until I got to college. And I got to college my freshman year. I go into a class, and the teacher would ask a question, and he'd say, "Say again. Would you repeat?" I can't understand. It turns out my accent was still very, very strong. And and the professors couldn't understand me. And again, I didn't feel like an American. Well, I was taking a speech course, which was one of the requirements, Speech 101. I went to see the professor, Dr. I'm amazed, I still remember some of those names, Dr. Colbus. And I thought my problem was, and if he could work with me on losing my French accent, and he worked with me, and I lost my French accent. And now I still feel like an American. But when I was 16 is when I got it naturalized.
And what about Jerry?
Same thing, Jerry and Emma at the same time.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask?
We're in the car and on the way to the airport. So what I wonder is what kind of agencies got you, or do you have any idea how you got from Switzerland to the orphanage? I mean, you got obviously some very favorable things happen. And do you have any idea how they happened, or who was involved, or was there a program of some sort?
Well, again, I can only guess. I think I know how it happened. I think I know what happened. I mentioned I know of at least one other instance where a boy was taken away with his mother, and I know he perished in the concentration camp. Before the war, my family was very, very close. You had an Uncle Simon, and Rachel, and my cousin Marcel. And at one point in time, my uncle was not home. They went to the house and they took my aunt and my cousin away. And my uncle found out about it, and he never went home. I think he's the one who found out that my parents had been taken away and that Jerry and I were left by ourselves. And I think he now, after his wife and son were taken away, he joined the French underground, which is the French Marquis, I think, which was a group, that were French citizens who would harass the Germans, who would ambush them and do things like that. And I think that he kind of became a watcher. I think, that he's the one who got us out of the apartment, who got us to that place in sur l'Église, who got us to Lyon, who got us and kept track of us somehow to Switzerland, who got us back to the orphanage. He was also active after the war in the Jewish Workmen's Circle. And one day when we were in the orphanage on a Sunday, he just showed up, and periodically he'd come and see us. And just to show you what nice people my mom and dad were, they found out about him. Oh, after the war, after a while, he remarried a lady who had a daughter, and they had another daughter. My mom and dad found out about him, and they brought him, his wife, and 2 daughters to the U.S. also.
Wow.
But it was Uncle Simon.
And what was his last name? Do you remember?
Yes, Borenstein. Yes, Simon Borenstein.
Oh, we know him.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
I had no idea that was your uncle.
Yes, that was my uncle.
Yeah, his wife, I forgot her name.
Excuse me?
His wife's name?
I know that. I'm a blank right now.
Myra, you remember? Simon Bornstein, we knew him.
Yeah, Simon. Yeah, the one daughter was Susie, and the older daughter was Nellie. Nellie became a French professor. She became a PhD and taught at Cornell. She also lives in New York.
I never knew that. I didn't know that name. That's before my time.
Victor, we're deeply indebted to you for doing this.
David, do you want to go on mute? Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Mick.
Yeah, Victor, we're deeply indebted to you for reviewing that for us. And we thank you so much.
Well, I thought that I tried to keep it to a half hour, and I went almost an hour and a half. So I'm a little bit embarrassed. And
don't be embarrassed.
Yeah, what can I say?
It was a few years out of your life. Don't be embarrassed.
Well, it's just I don't know. It was a long time ago, and it was a long time ago, and that's it. But again, I've been incredibly lucky, because when you think about it, you know what could have happened. A simple thing like when we started walking, towards the light. And when I think about it, I could have been walking back into France.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some other things that happened where I was so incredibly, well, both Jerry and I were so incredibly lucky. And
really nice for us too, because it tells us something about our family and our heritage. And, Grandma and Grandpa and your parents were really good people.
Yeah.
Doing what they did.
Yep. Well, we were on there a long time today.
Well, thank you for doing it. All I can say is I'm sorry for kicking you in the shins all those times. You get to the States and I kick you in the shins.
Well, that's okay. It didn't hurt very much. I was just wondering, why are you doing that to me? I'm not a bad guy. Yeah, it just came up big. But you're only 6 or 7 years old, so I don't think your family knows what we're talking about.
That's very funny.
Okay, does anybody
Can I ask a question? I want to ask a question.
Sure.
Victor, I'm Mick's daughter.
Yes,
I'm the middle daughter. The best middle daughter. Sorry. Anyway,
okay.
my question is, in age, where are you guys all in age? Like, Vic, are you, my Uncle Bob and my Uncle Ed are both passed away, but where are you in age in comparison to the Schlenzes and the Schneiders?
Okay, Uncle Ed was, was older than I came next. I'm 87 now, so I'm an old man, and and Bob came next. It was 80. I'm not sure. Bob, I think, was about 4 years younger than I was. So, he's 7. So I think he'd be about 83 right now, Bob.
I think
and Ed would probably be about 90, 91.
So what you're saying, babysat Joey and Myra and Ruthie and
Yeah.
No, Norman was the youngest of all of that generation.
Gotcha.
So Vic is 87 and I'm 74, which makes David 77. He'll be 78 in July. So Myra is going to be 70 on Wednesday.
And
She'll never catch up with us.
no,
And Joe is the baby, right, of everybody.
Ed, Bob, and myself were all 4 years apart. So.
And so how, was Gordy the oldest of all?
No.
No, Ed was.
Ed was.
Ed, then Gordy?
Yes. And me, because Gordon and I were, yeah, we always claimed we were the same age because when he was 14, I was 14.
Mm.
We always claimed, that we're, that we were 3 months apart and born on different continents. And we dare people to figure it out.
Wow.
Victor, you're definitely the elder of the group.
Yes.
Is anybody else have any questions?
Ruth, thank you for getting this all together. That's just.
Yeah, I mean, this has been really great. I mean, we do these calls every other Sunday at 1 o'clock, and you would all be welcome to join. And we've, from the time Mick spoke to Victor and he said he wanted to join in February, he did not miss a single call. And besides me, he's the only one that didn't miss a single call. So it's really been great for me personally because I hadn't seen or talked to Victor in 50 years since he moved to California. And so it's just been really, really nice to connect. And it's made us even closer with Mick, and he and Bob kept the connection with Victor all these years, occasionally seeing each other for lunch or dinner, whatever. So we're all really grateful to have Vic join our calls. And if any of you are interested, you can always email me and let me know, and I'll make sure you've got an invite. But it's basically, this is our regular time. It's 1 o'clock every other Sunday. Oh, sorry, Eastern time, every other Sunday, because we had to make sure we could get California and Paris in there at a decent hour. So if anybody has anything else, you could, there's an email thread that I started, but Victor's not. So I will.
Ruth?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, as David.
Yeah.
So one other thing that's of interest is the proximity. The Schneiders, the Schlenzes, and the other Schneiders were all within 2 blocks in Miller Beach.
Oh, yeah.
All of my aunts and uncles were right in the same place on both sides of the family.
That's true. Except for us.
Well,
up until second grade, I was in Miller. So we used to see everybody almost every Sunday.
That's true.
Anyway, just interest.
Well, we used to we used to see Grandpa and Grandma every Friday because Grandpa had his payroll, if you recall, and he used to come to all the houses on Friday evening and give everyone a dollar, everyone of his grandkids $1. Remember that?
Yeah. I don't remember.
I think we were too young for that. We used to go to their house on Sunday afternoons, but I don't remember $1. Maybe there was $1, but I don't.
No, I don't know. He used to give us $1, and boy, I'll tell you, that was a lot of money.
Wait a minute. No, Victor is absolutely right. Grandpa would get brand new dollar bills. They would be brand new.
Yep.
Uncirculated. And he'd give us, whenever we'd see him, he'd have those for us. And I think it was because he was associated with the bank at that time.
He was a director of the bank.
Exactly. Yep.
I have a home video from Miller, Indiana, apparently with David Schneider and Ruth Schneider as infants that I can share with you guys. I don't know how I ended up with it, but I think it was up on YouTube for a while, and then I took it down, but I can put it back up if you guys want to see it.
You want to share it now?
Yeah, I have to find it. I just, but I will send you a link, Ruth. And then
Okay.
you can share it with
So
everybody.
I'll start an email thread for everybody, the whole family here. And so then if you have anything you want to ask or say, that'd be a good time. And Vic, I hope one of these days we'll get to meet your sons.
I hope so too, but
So I think if nobody has anything else, we'll call it a day, but thank you all so much. This has been great, and I'm glad so many of you could join us. It was really.
One more note, the lovely blonde lady that is at the bottom of my screen is Margarita, who is Brian's wife. Brian is in the car with David.
Yes, we are. I'll be home in a little bit, babe.
Well, a long little bit. Okay. So.
Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, John.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Vic.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.